Hello, my name is Anthony Siccaro. I'm founder and president of Providence Financial and Insurance Services, located right in the heart of the San Fernando Valley in Woodland Hills, California. I'm also a host of the Provident Financial Retirement Show, which airs every Saturday in Southern California on AM 870 KRL Lay the Answer. And a couple times a month or so, I try to do a market update and simply just give you some feelings of where I think the market might be headed and some dangers that might be out there. And that's the purpose of this video today, is just to give you some insight. Now, I haven't done one of these for probably 3 or 4 weeks because we've had a new election, we have a new president, and no one really knew which way things were going to go. And I wanted to have a couple of weeks under our belt before I, gave some insight. And the other day, I was speaking in front of a group of people, group of retirees, and I mentioned that I'm still worried about the market. I think we could have some, potential problems ahead. And I also mentioned that I had been recently interviewed by a radio station in Northern California, and that this lady started the interview by telling me that she had had Harry Dent on interviewed him a week earlier, and he said that he thinks we could have a 70 to 90% market meltdown at this point. And she started my interview with her by asking me if I thought that that was correct, if I agreed with him. And unfortunately, I don't think it's impossible. Matter of fact, if I'm going to put odds, I think it's actually more possible than not that we have some major problems ahead. And if you don't know who Harry Dent is a nationally famed economist. He might even be world renowned, but in the financial industry and even outside of the financial industry, he's really, really well known. He successfully predicted the crash of 2008, also the crash of 2001. He makes an extensive study of demographics, and all of his forecasts are based on demographics, the aging population, the fact that baby boomers are getting older, the fact that there's 10,000 baby boomers a day that are starting to turn 70 years old. And based on demographics, he's been able to come up with some highly successful predictions. And I really believe that he's the economist, if you will. And so if Harry Dent says something, then people tend to listen. And I was telling this story in front of this group of people the other day, and I had a gentleman in the back that said, "Why? Why do you think the economy, has some problems ahead? And why does Harry think that there could be some issues?" And so really, I wanted to just take a few minutes and address, just one or two of the major reasons why I think that there could be some problems. Now, here we are 2 weeks into Trump's presidency, and I'm ecstatic to say that the stock market is still around the record high levels. No one knew what was going to happen. The stock market likes stability. There's been a lack of stability in the stock market. Or I should say there's been a lack of stability with Trump. I don't think there's too many people that would deny that. And so the stock market is just kind of ridden that wave, which I'm ecstatic to see. And I really hope we don't have another major crash. But we're in the second longest bull market cycle right now in history, outside of the 80s and 90s. And so there's a lot of reasons why I think the market could crash. But I want to just take a few minutes and talk about one that I think might be the biggest reason. And let's list some of the ones that could be some of the reasons, and I could probably take 15 or 20 minutes and talk about each one of them. But there's a lot of reasons. Let's talk about the fact that Trump is probably not that stable. I'm not talking mentally. I think he's a very brilliant guy. I think he's doing what he said he's going to do. It's kind of interesting that you have someone that runs on a bunch of campaign promises, and then he actually does what he says he's going to do, and everybody's a little worried that he's actually doing what he says he's going to do. It's almost like that's not the expectation. You're not supposed to get in office and do what you say. You're supposed to get in office and just do nothing like everybody else. So it's kind of interesting. But there's a lot of fear, and fear is generally not good for the stock market. Instability is not good for the stock market. And I think anything Trump does could be, problematic. Just recently, I guess he irritated the Prime Minister of Australia, or the President of Australia, over some refugee, criteria or miscommunication or spat or something like that. And certainly I think there's the ability for him to irritate other leaders. So I think just his instability, I think we're one tweet away from him saying the wrong thing and sending the market in the wrong direction. So I think that's one reason. You look at Britain, look at Brexit. The Eurozone for the first time has been called into question, the viability. If Britain leaves and the question is, what about these other countries that, maybe think that they're better, Germany and so on. If it's good enough for Britain, maybe it's good enough for Germany. So I think that would certainly not be good for the U.S. economy and the U.S. stock market. How about the fact that, we're $20 trillion in debt? Certainly, that's not good for the stock market. And tied closely to that is the fact that, the government wants you to believe that, they want to raise interest rates, but there's nothing stopping them at this point, according to what they're preaching, but they're not able to do it. So why? Do they really not want to raise interest rates and they don't want to tell you, or can they not raise interest rates? And I think it's a little bit of both. Let me ask you, the government's gone in more debt in the last decade than they have in the entire previous history of this country. So if you owe $20 trillion on a credit card, let me ask you, you want interest rates to be high or low? Of course you want rates to be low. So I really believe that the government doesn't want rates to go up. But I also believe that the economy is not doing as well as the Federal Reserve and the government want you to believe. So I think there's that dynamic as well, too. And the proof is in the pudding when it comes to interest rates. The economies that are doing well, economies that are growing, interest rates rise. That's just the economical cycle. And yet, the government saying the economy is doing well, everything's going great, but interest rates haven't backed that up. And that's critically important, because if interest rates can't back it up, then really it's just all talk. And I've got some other YouTube videos on this. You're welcome to watch those videos as well, where I get into more detail about that. But if you're going to ask me, like this gentleman did, what is the one area that I think could cause the next major catastrophe or major market meltdown? What is it? I think it could be China. It could be our relationship with China. It's no secret that, China and Trump have already started spatting a little bit, and Trump's talked down about China and talked about trade wars. And yet, China is the second largest economy in the world, right behind the United States. And if we damaged our relationship with China, then we would certainly damage the U.S. economy. And we kind of had a taste of that a year ago when China devalued the currency by 2%. Some of you might remember that, where China just came out and said, you know what, we're lowering the currency by 2%. And what did our stock market do? Our stock market went down 10 or 12% within just a matter of days. And yes, it bounced back, but we saw an initial reaction of simply a 2% reduction caused a very quick reaction in our stock market. Now, what I find interesting is that if you look at the euro over on the Eurozone side of things, across the pond, well, their currency and the British pound, their currency is down 10 or 12%, even more, against the dollar. We don't hear about that, but China's currency goes down 2%, and they announce it, and all of a sudden it's a big deal, and the stock market reacts. And I think the market reacted not so much because the currency went down 2%. I don't think that was the issue. I think it was the issue that China was pulling the strings and using governmental authority to control the dollar. I think that was the biggest issue. Well, if they did that and we start having problems with Trump, what's going to happen to the U.S. economy if China says, hey, we're going to cut off trade with you, or we're going to call all the debt that you owe us? Because China is a massive holder of United States bonds. I'm not sure that they're the biggest holder of bonds, but I know that they own, hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions, of bonds of the United States. And that's very critically important. Now, at the same time, China's economy, independent of the United States, is not doing all that well. At least that's what we believe. And I say that because we really don't know, right? China is a communistic country, so we really can't count on their reporting to to tell us what they're doing. You kind of have to believe what they say, and we really don't know. But what they've said is that, for the last number of years, they're growing at a rate of in excess of 7%. And last year, they grew less than 7%, and they were actually mad that that wasn't good enough for them. I don't know if anyone really believes that they're growing at that rate. But what they do believe, and what we do know to be true, is we do know that China is highly leveraged. They're allowing people to borrow money to put into the stock market. It's highly leveraged. And they control their stock market in a way that the United States does not. So the bottom line is that that relationship with China and Trump could set something off. And I don't think China is necessarily one to just sit back and let Trump do what he's going to do. I think that there's potential to be some ramifications and some trade wars. And I think that could be the number one reason why the stock market, at some point, has a major crash. That could be the start of, a major downplay for the market. And again, I hope I'm wrong. Now, there's also such a thing called the black swan event. And I've read the story of where black swan actually comes from. Apparently, some people somewhere said that there were no such thing as black swans, and eventually someone found a black swan. And I probably do a lot better job of telling the story than that, but that's kind of where the black swan story comes from. And the reality is that black swan event today is representative of an event that no one sees coming. So when they talk about a black swan event, it means an event that really no one sees coming and that you can't forecast. And the second part of a black swan event is that you could see it coming after it happened. And a good example of that is a subprime mortgage that we had in 2008. Prior to that, everyone didn't see it coming. No one saw it coming. But after 2008, you had a lot of people coming out of the woodworks that said, oh yeah, it makes all the sense in the world, and this is why, and and it does make sense. But prior to that, they said no one saw it coming. I don't even know if I believe that, but that's what they said. So black swan event is something that no one sees coming, but after it's all over, very obvious. And we could have a black swan event. Sometimes people will ask me, well, what's the next black swan event? I don't know. That's the whole point of a black swan event. So I do think there are things out there that we don't see coming as well that could cause the next market crash. And I really do feel like right now there's an avalanche waiting to happen for all the reasons that we talked about. And I feel that any one little snowball or rock falls and starts to roll down the hill could start that boulder and could start that avalanche. And I just don't want you to get hurt when that happens. So, so what do you do? Well, what I have my clients doing is just really stepping away from the stock market for now, investing in investments that are really unrelated to the stock market, investments that will be safe or at least should be safe and insured the next time that, the market crashes. All of our clients' investments were safe in 2008, were safe in 2001. That's a good pattern. So we have our clients in a situation where they're outside of the stock market for now, treading water, earning a decent rate of return. And our target for our clients is 4 to 7%. Doesn't mean you're going to average in that range. A lot of our clients are averaging around 5%. So if we can average you 5% and keep your money really much more conservative than the stock market, then I think that's probably a good place for you to be. And certainly if you want to know more about that, you're welcome to get our number from our website or call us. Our website's providencefinancialinc.com. There you can like us on Facebook. We put out a couple of things each week and just updates about Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter if you tweet. You can like us on LinkedIn. We put out stuff on LinkedIn. And I think probably the most important thing you can do is follow us on YouTube. I've got a lot of videos on YouTube like this. All my past market updates, you can go and watch what we talked about in the past. And we'll continue to do these as well, too. So again, you can start with all those from our homepage, providencefinancialinc.com. And if you want to call us, feel free to call us. The number at the office is 818-887-6443. So if you're not a client of ours, call us. I'll be more than happy to spend a few minutes on the phone with you, answer your questions, and see where we go from there. If you are a client of ours, thank you so much for your trust. I appreciate your business. You know that I don't take it lightly. I'm honored to have you as a client, and my door is always open to you. So thank you again, and I hope this has helped. God bless.